My name is John David Matherne. I'm originally from Raceland, Louisiana. My family, I'm the youngest in my family. I have one sister who's a year older than me, married, has an adorable son who's my godson. I'm very proud of him. I grew up in Raceland. I went to St. Mary's. St. Mary's has always been my church parish. It was also my elementary school. And I guess growing up there, one thing that was really, really different about my family, I feel like, was that we were friends with a lot of priests. Particularly my grandparents have always been. My grandparents' house has always been the place for priests to go on Sunday afternoon. So different priests would come over, and I guess I was demystified of priests at a young age because I saw them as friends. You know, they weren't the scary guy up and behind the altar, but they were the guys that would come over and tease us and play around and joke around, and it was just a good environment to grow up in. So. The culture here, it's home. I've always dreamed of no matter where I went for college or where I went for different trips or to work or whatever, I always saw myself coming back home. I guess I got Bayou blood. I got that Bayou blood, right? I feel like I grew up on the Bayou. I've always enjoyed this area. And one of the key things, and one of the things I think that makes it really unique, is that we still have that sense of that family bond. I grew up. I know every one of my aunts and uncles. I grew up around my grandparents' house, and we didn't need to get babysitters because Mama or Papa would take care of us, and my cousins were my best friends, and so it was a very family-oriented area, and I see that comes together in a beautiful way within the context of the parish, and so the church always felt like another home, and I'm excited. I'm really excited to be able to serve that culture, that family-centered area. My spiritual journey really took off probably when I was in high school. It was through the different stuff that the diocese offered. I went to Tech Teens Encounter Christ back in, I think it was 2006. Nice long time ago. But I guess like I took advantage of the things that were around me. My youth group at St. Hilary, my time doing diocesan events, whether it be youth rally or tech or things like that. And I really felt like those events, while they weren't they were a good starting point. Now when I got to college, I realized that the events made me fall in love, I guess. They introduced me to Jesus. But when I got to college, I went to LSU. I realized there that it's on me. It was on me at that point because there wasn't going to be an event. There wasn't going to be something that was going to continue to harbor this encounter. So I needed to take the step and actually commit to the prayer, commit to opening myself up to what it is that God wanted to do in my life. The more that I opened up and the more that I understood what prayer was, that prayer is not just a list of words or empty things that we say. It's not stringing together what sounds good, but prayer is exactly that. It's encountering a relationship. It's encountering a person, oftentimes in silence, in an adoration chapel, without all of the decorations, I guess, stripped down. It's a relationship with a person, and just being able to share my heart in prayer. That was really whenever I started understanding, and I guess my faith went from an encounter. There was this encounter where I got to meet Jesus, but it wasn't until that I really understood what prayer was and applied everything that I started to realize who Jesus was in a more intimate and beautiful way. Like I said, priests were not seen in my young years as kind of like this weird guy that was standoffish. It was they were friends. I saw that priests were men, and that they were good men, and that they were men that wanted to do what God wanted them to do. When I got into high school and when I started really understanding who Jesus was, the question started up in my mind of, hey, would you think about being a priest? And through some wrestling, and I through some wrestling with that question, and constantly kind of putting myself out there at these different retreats, I realized in my heart that my deepest desire was to be a dad. I could easily be a father of a family, have a wife, have my own kids, or I could be a father of a parish. In fact, it took a priest to tell me, when he met me, he said, I had confession with him one day, and he said, when I met you, I knew you were going to be a great dad. Now you just have to figure out if that's with the congregation or with the family. And ever since then, that question of, okay, is God maybe calling me to be a priest? It's been coming up. I've had some very, very good men in my life. My dad and I, my dad's my best friend. Since I was a kid, he's always been my best friend. To this day, we still hang out. I'll go stop by and visit with him and joke around with him and hang out and whatever. We stay in contact very, very closely. My grandfather, both of my grandfathers were really good men, hard workers, very disciplined, and provided everything they could for their family. And those influences always had me inspired. Like, I want to be that dad. Not a dad. I want to be that dad. I want to be the coach. I want to be the role model. I want to do everything that I can do to help form my kids to be the best people they can be. But then I was like, man, I could even do this faith thing. Like, it's going to be awesome. It's going to be great. This is exactly what I want to do with my life. And then this priest drops, well, all those things, are you going to do that with a family or are you going to do that with a congregation? I don't know. I have no idea. I'm in high school. Whenever every question's in the air of what I'm supposed to do with my life. So I bailed out and I went to college. I went to LSU and I was like, you know what? No, that whole church thing's great, but let me see what college is about. Let me first do that, because I know that's going to fulfill me more than the priesthood or seminary ever could, right? So I go to college, and while I was there, I met a young lady, and we dated for a long time, and I noticed that those desires to be a dad were coming up, and they were coming up strong. And the longer that we dated, the more we dated, the more I realized that all the desires were there, but they weren't being fulfilled through this state of life. They weren't being fulfilled in this relationship. And it was in prayer that I felt like the Lord was just telling me. He was like, if you want to marry her, marry her. You want to be with her? Be with her. And I'm going to bless you in that. But that's not what I created you for. And ever since that night, whenever I broke up with her, we went our separate ways, and I started really pursuing the priesthood as the question. Ever since then, God hasn't disappointed. Every one of those desires that I had that came up in my life, whether it be for kids, whether it be for communion, intimacy, whatever those desires were, have been fulfilled. But they've been fulfilled in the way that God intended them to be fulfilled, not in the ways that I tried to fulfill them. Because the relationship would have been blessed, but it would have been completely on me to try and fulfill those desires. But what God's calling me to is not only is he giving me the desire, but he also wants to give me the means by which he's going to fulfill it. So just my entire time in the seminary, those times that I've been doubting, is God really calling me to this? I don't know. This has always been the kind of spot where I can go back to and say, Lord, I know you're here. I know you're working here, because there's desires here that I can never fulfill on my own, that you're constantly fulfilling. I think my biggest experience at the seminary, the most impactful experience that I've had in the seminary, has been the brotherhood that we experience with the other guys. So I've been in a seminary now. It is my 6th year, and I've never felt the depth of friendship that I felt with anybody else than the guys that I go to school with, the guys that I pray with, and the guys that I eat with, and we do everything with at school, right? It really is a brotherhood. I remember one guy that was for our diocese, he ended up leaving, but he said, "You have no idea how good y'all have it." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He says, "In 9 months, I feel like I had the most intimate and the most deep relationships that I ever have had with other brothers in my entire life." And he was in the seminary for 9 months. I have friendships with guys from all over the country that I went to school with that, no question, are going to last a lifetime. But the biggest grace is also at times the biggest cross, because community life a lot of times can be hard. Fraternal correction is not fun. But the same way that the old sayings, what was it, steel sharpens steel, or diamond cuts diamond, whichever one you want to use, when we rub up against each other, it's helping form us into better men, into better priests. Guys that I'm friend with, some of my best friends in the seminary, are the people I've learned the most from, and that they've learned the most from me, because we rub off on one another. We're complementary to one another. By having these relationships that are so lasting and so intense and so deep, we're going to continue to feed off of that friendship for the rest of our ministry. Particularly with our diocese, is something that's really beautiful to see 7 or 8 of us a night. Well, one night every 2 weeks at Notre Dame, get together and eat dinner and just share what's going on. For some accountability. Just to keep up, okay, look, I know you're struggling with this, but hey, I want you to be a saint. So what do I need to do to help you? Right? Because the end goal of this whole thing, the end goal of seminary, the end goal of priesthood, we can say whatever we want about it. It forming deep relationships, it getting us ready to be in ministry. Ultimate goal, real talk, is sainthood. And I want to be a saint just like I know every other one of those guys on that poster want to be a saint. So if we can do that and we can help form that in one another, there's no question that the diocese is going to change, that the people of the diocese will be impacted and inspired by the saintliness of the men that are leading the flock, that are helping lead the flock. The best way to address the excitement of coming home has to be, over the last 6 years, anytime that I've had a chance to come home for ministry, I've noticed that when I go back to school, it's rejuvenated me. So most of the seminary, it's like any other schooling. We spend most of our time, with our face in a book, or in prayer with the rest of the community, whatever it is. And we don't get a lot of experience of being able to be out with the people in the parish, or with the youth group, or with the elderly people at the nursing home, or whatever. Like we get a little taste of it, but it's not much. And the seminary tries to give those encounters. But every time I've had those encounters given to me by the seminary, my first response is always, but that's not my people. Like there's always been this sense of, man, it's great that I'm going to the nursing home. It's great that I'm going to visit the prisoners. It's great that I'm going to visit the homeless. But it's always this one little statement at the end of, but that's not my people. And I think when I come home, when I'm come home, my schedule gets packed real quick because I'm excited about being able to come back and visit my people. The people that I am. I mean, I grew up here. I'm from here. I want to serve here. I want to serve the people of this area. I love this area. I have to say, I really think that it's the thing that excites. It may sound cliche. It may sound kind of questionable that I'm trying to sell it hard, but it's not. I really do love the people, and that's what I'm excited about. The same way that a husband is excited to go home and see his wife at night, that's how I'm feeling whenever I get to drive over the bridge into Zalman's and end up back in my diocese. I think every single time I pass on Highway 90 coming into Raceland, I get this peaceful kind of sigh of, I'm home.